So, the first question we'll be addressing today is how do I find podcasts to be a guest on?
That's a great question, Paul. Finding the right podcast to be a guest on is an important first step. The article suggests starting by identifying your target audience and the topics you're knowledgeable about.
Absolutely. Once you have that information, you can use podcast directories like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher to find relevant podcasts. These platforms categorize podcasts by genre, making it easier for you to find ones that align with your expertise.
Another strategy mentioned in the article is using Google. You can type in your topic of expertise followed by the word podcast to get a list of relevant shows. For example, if you're an expert in digital marketing, you could search for digital marketing podcasts.
Social media is also a great tool for finding podcasts. Many podcast hosts promote their shows on platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can follow hashtags related to your field of expertise to discover new podcasts.
That's right. Networking is another great way to find podcast guest opportunities. Attend industry events, webinars, and online forums to meet podcast hosts and producers who might be looking for guests.
And lastly, if you're short on time or want some professional help, you can consider using a podcast booking service. These agencies connect experts with podcast hosts who are looking for guests. Just keep in mind that there may be a fee involved.
Moving on to the next question, how do I pitch myself as a guest to a podcast? This is an important step in securing a guest spot.
Absolutely. The article suggests starting by researching the podcast thoroughly. Understand its format, target audience, and the topics it covers. This will help you tailor your pitch and show the host that you've done your homework.
Your pitch should clearly state who you are, what you do, and why you would be a valuable guest. Highlight your expertise and how it aligns with the podcast content.
That's right. It's also a good idea to include potential topics for discussion in your pitch. These should be relevant to the podcast's audience and showcase your knowledge and insights.
And don't forget to mention any previous podcast appearances or public speaking engagements. This can help establish your credibility and show that you're comfortable speaking in a public forum.
Absolutely. And it's important to include a call to action in your pitch, such as a suggestion for a follow-up call to discuss potential topics in more detail.
And lastly, don't forget to follow up with a polite reminder if you don't hear back within a week or two. But be careful not to be too pushy or send too many follow-up emails.
That's great advice, Avery. Moving on to the next question. What should I prepare before appearing on a podcast?
Preparation is key to a successful podcast appearance. The article suggests starting by researching the podcast and its host, preparing key points, and practicing your responses.
That's right. It's also important to prepare a bio that highlights your expertise and provides some background information about yourself. And don't forget to check your equipment and have a quiet space for recording.
Absolutely. And it's a good idea to prepare any resources or materials that you might want to reference during the interview. This could be articles, case studies, or any other relevant information.
And let's not forget about promoting the appearance. The article mentions that it's important to share the episode on social media, your website, and through email newsletters. You can also create clips and tag the host to encourage sharing.
That's a great point, Paul. Promoting the episode not only helps get the word out about your appearance, but also helps to establish your authority and drive traffic to your own platform.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the benefits of being a podcast guest. It allows you to reach a wider audience, establish your authority in your field, build relationships with hosts and listeners, and improve your speaking skills.
That's right, Paul. Being a podcast guest can have a lot of positive impacts on your personal brand or business. It's a great opportunity to network and leverage your appearance for future opportunities.
Well said, Avery. And that wraps up the first section of our discussion on getting booked as a podcast guest.
Stay tuned for more great tips and advice in the next section.
Absolutely. So in this section, we'll be talking about what you should prepare before appearing on a podcast.
That's right. Preparation is key to a successful podcast appearance. The first step is to research the podcast and its audience. You need to understand the format of the show and the type of questions the host typically asks.
That's a great point, Avery. Once you have an understanding of the podcast, you can prepare a list of key points you want to cover during the interview. These should align with your expertise and the interests of the podcast's audience.
Absolutely. And it's also important to practice your responses to potential questions. This will help you deliver clear, concise answers during the interview and ensure that you're well prepared.
Right. Practicing really helps to build confidence. Another thing to consider is preparing a short bio for the host to read at the beginning of the episode. This bio should highlight your expertise and achievements.
And don't forget to ensure you have a quiet, comfortable space to record the interview. Check your internet connection and make sure your microphone and headphones are working properly.
That's essential for a smooth recording. Additionally, if there are any resources or materials you plan to mention during the interview, make sure you have them prepared. This could include a book you've written, a course you're offering, or a recent blog post.
And lastly, get a good night's sleep before the interview. This will help you stay alert and focused during the conversation.
Absolutely, a good night's sleep can make a big difference. So now that we've discussed what to prepare before appearing on a podcast, let's move on to how you can promote your podcast appearance.
Yes, promoting your podcast appearance is crucial to maximizing its impact. Start by sharing the episode on your social media platforms. Include a link to the episode and a brief description of the topics you discussed.
That's a great way to reach your existing audience. You can also promote the episode on your website or blog by writing a post about your podcast appearance. Include key takeaways from the episode and a link to listen.
Exactly, and email newsletters are another effective way to promote your podcast appearance. Include a link to the episode in your next newsletter, along with a brief description of the episode.
And one more idea is to create a short video or audio clip from the episode to share on social media. This can help pique your audience's interest and encourage them to listen to the full episode.
Don't forget to tag the podcast host and show in your promotional posts. This can help increase the reach of your posts and show your appreciation for the opportunity.
Absolutely, tagging is important. And finally, encourage your network to listen to the episode and share it with their own networks. This can help increase the episode's reach and potentially attract new listeners to the podcast.
So those are some great strategies for promoting your podcast appearance. Now let's move on to the next topic, the equipment you need to be a podcast guest.
As a podcast guest, there are a few basic pieces of equipment you'll need for a high-quality recording. First and foremost, you'll need a good quality microphone, headphones, and a stable internet connection.
A USB microphone is a popular choice for podcast guests because they're easy to use and typically offer good sound quality. And don't forget about the headphones. They're important to prevent echo or feedback during the recording. Closed-back headphones are recommended for the best sound isolation.
Absolutely. And having a stable internet connection is crucial for a smooth recording, especially if the interview is being conducted remotely. Consider using a wired connection for the most stable internet.
Another important factor is finding a quiet, comfortable space to record the interview. Make sure the room is free from background noise and has good acoustics.
That's right. And some podcast hosts may ask you to record a backup of your audio locally. For this, you'll need recording software like Audacity or GarageBand.
And lastly, if the podcast is being recorded for video as well, you may need a webcam. Make sure your webcam is high quality and positioned at eye level for the best video quality.
So, those are the equipment essentials for being a podcast guest. Now let's move on to the final topic, how to ensure a successful podcast interview.
Absolutely. Ensuring a successful podcast interview involves preparation, active engagement, and follow-up. Just like we mentioned earlier, start by researching the podcast and its audience. Understand the format of the show and the type of questions the host typically asks.
That's right. And make sure to prepare a list of key points you want to cover during the interview that align with your expertise and the interests of the podcast audience.
During the interview, it's important to be present and engaged. Listen carefully to the host's questions and respond thoughtfully. Avoid overloading your answers with jargon or overly complex ideas.
Exactly. Use storytelling to engage the audience and illustrate your points. People are naturally drawn to stories, and they can make your message more memorable.
And don't forget to promote yourself and your work during the interview, but do it subtly in a way that adds value to the audience.
After the interview, make sure to thank the host for the opportunity. Ask when the episode will be released and how you can help promote it.
And lastly, take some time to reflect on the interview and identify any areas for improvement. This will help you hone your skills for future podcast appearances.
Great points, Avery. So that wraps up our discussion on what you should prepare before appearing on a podcast. how to promote your podcast appearance, and the equipment you need to be a podcast guest.
We hope you found this information helpful in your podcast guest journey. And remember, preparation, engagement, and follow-up are key to a successful podcast interview.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. In this article, we learned about the benefits of being a podcast guest. Appearing on a podcast can help you reach a wider audience, establish your authority in your field, and build relationships with influencers in your industry.
That's right, Paul. Being a podcast guest can significantly extend your reach because podcasts have a global audience. This means you can connect with people you might not reach through other channels.
And it's not just about reaching more people. Being a podcast guest also helps establish your authority in your field. By sharing your knowledge and insights, you can demonstrate your expertise and build credibility with your audience.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the unique opportunity to connect with influencers in your industry. By appearing on their shows, you can build relationships that could lead to future collaborations or opportunities.
That's right, Avery. Building relationships with influencers is so important in any industry. And being a podcast guest can also drive traffic to your website or blog. By promoting your appearance and sharing valuable content, you can attract new visitors to your site.
And lastly, appearing on podcasts can help improve your public speaking and communication skills. With each appearance, you'll become more comfortable speaking in public and conveying your ideas clearly.
Moving on to the next topic, we discussed how to handle technical issues during a podcast interview.
Yes, technical issues can be frustrating, but with preparation and a calm approach, they can be managed effectively. The first step is to test your equipment before the interview. Make sure your microphone, headphones, and internet connection are working properly.
And if you do encounter a technical issue during the interview, stay calm and communicate the issue to the host. They may be able to offer a solution or reschedule the interview if necessary.
If the issue is with your internet connection, try turning off your video or moving closer to your router. If the problem persists, you may need to reschedule the interview.
And if the issue is with your microphone or headphones, check your audio settings and ensure the correct device is selected. If the problem persists, you may need to use a different device or reschedule the interview.
Remember, technical issues are common in podcasting and most hosts will be understanding. The key is to communicate openly and work together to find a solution.
Now let's talk about how to build a relationship with the podcast host.
Building a relationship with the podcast host can lead to future opportunities and collaborations. It all starts with researching the host before the interview. Understand their background, interests, and the type of content they produce. This will help you connect with them on a personal level during the interview.
During the interview, be respectful and appreciative of the host's time. Show interest in their work and ask them questions. This can help establish a mutual connection.
And after the interview, send a thank you note to the host. Express your appreciation for the opportunity and highlight any aspects of the interview you particularly enjoyed.
Staying in touch with the host after the interview is also important. Follow them on social media, engage with their content, and share their podcast episodes.
And consider inviting the host to be a guest on your own podcast, blog, or webinar. This can help strengthen your relationship and provide value to the host.
Remember, building relationships takes time and genuine effort. Be patient, consistent, and authentic in your interactions.
Now let's dive into how you can leverage your podcast appearance for your personal brand or business.
Leveraging your podcast appearance can boost your personal brand or business. One way to do this is by promoting the episode on your social media platforms, website, and email newsletter. This can help drive traffic to your site and attract new followers or customers.
Absolutely. And you can use your podcast appearance to demonstrate your expertise and credibility. Share key takeaways from the episode and how they relate to your work. This will show your audience that you have valuable knowledge to offer.
Another way to leverage your podcast appearance is by repurposing the podcast content for your own platforms. For example, you could write a blog post about the episode, create a video discussing the key points, or share quotes from the interview on social media.
And don't forget about networking opportunities. Use your podcast appearance as a chance to connect with the host, other guests, and listeners. Building relationships in your industry can lead to future collaborations and opportunities.
Lastly, track the impact of your podcast appearance. Monitor any increase in website traffic, social media followers, or business inquiries following the episode. This will help you understand the effectiveness of podcasting as a marketing tool and inform your future strategies.
So there you have it. We covered the benefits of being a podcast guest, how to handle technical issues, how to build a relationship with the podcast host, and how to leverage your podcast appearance for your personal brand or business.
Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Remember to do your research when finding podcasts to be a guest on. Pitch yourself in a concise and engaging way. Prepare for the interview. Promote your podcast appearance and track its impact.